today about Vancouver?
I feel the same today as I did immediately after the game. And I think the other staff do. It's one of those games that I think the frustration has lasted longer than it does normally. That you're able to shake it off pretty quick. But I feel like the flatness of the performance, the lack of energy, the lack of spark, the way the stadium felt as well. I think that it was that perfect storm of an afternoon kickoff, another very high-profile sporting event in the town on the day, and I think that amounted to a game that just felt flat, and we weren't able. It was our responsibility to bring it to life. We didn't bring it to life, and I sort of stand by what I said around us losing the game in the first half. As strange as it sounds, given that we were 0-0 going in at half time, I just felt like we had the chance to put that game to bed. We should have been the dominant team. We weren't the dominant team. And we exposed ourselves to what happened in the second half, and I think every single one of the players would have been really disappointed, and hopefully that means something moving into Saturday's game.
And even more frustration after watching the video?
Absolutely, and it's always the case. It is always the case that rarely do you see something distinctly different to what your gut is telling you, but I think it sort of magnified it on Saturday because we felt like we really let ourselves down in ways that we haven't over the course of the first 9 games. So yeah, we weren't good enough with the ball. We didn't use the ball well enough. We didn't take our chances at the top of the box that we had, and we didn't create clean cut chances in the way that we would want to. But we also let ourselves down defensively in the second half, and that's not something that I can often level at this group, because I think that's been the hallmark of this team's success over 20 games, which is a really sustained period. But on Saturday, I just felt there was some laziness that crept into the way in which we defended in the second half. And in the previous 2 games, we haven't been phenomenal in front of goal. We haven't created loads and loads of chances, but we've been very good and very solid defensively, which you have to be. And Saturday it was on both sides of the ball not good enough.
When you sort of look back, do you think, well, there's just a few things, it was just an off day, or do you start thinking it's time to make bigger changes in the lineup?
No, I still think if you... I don't want to overreact, and I don't want to make a catastrophe out of one performance. And I feel that if prior to we looked at that game as the end of a 10-game block, we wanted to sort of chunk the season up in that way. And I think had someone said at the beginning that we would lose 2 of 10 games, we would have 16 points, we would have the basis of a really competitive team, I'd be really happy with where we were. I just think to finish in the way that we finished against Vancouver, it was really disappointing, and I don't think it's indicative of anything wider, but it will hopefully sharpen me, sharpen the staff, and sharpen the players. And I always take the stance in these situations: poor performance or a poor result has to mean something moving forward, and it has to mean that you right this wrong, and we have to go and do that over the course of the coming 2 games, because we've got 2 really difficult games now, and hopefully there is a greater good to a poor performance against Vancouver.
Really kind of the early impressions of Julian. I know it's early in the week.
Yeah, he's. I've spoken to him a couple of times prior to him coming in, and he's a really solid guy. As you'd expect, in the mould of Will Trapp or Zarek or one of those guys. And you're really pleased to add that type of character to the dressing room. I think he'll be really solid, and will certainly add a strand of leadership to the group and complement what we've got already. I think he's kept himself in really good condition. We've had all the sort of underlying physical data from his training sessions with Miami, and we know what he's done, what he's got in the tank, and I'm sure he's not a million miles away from being a real contributor, in spite of the fact that he's not played a great deal over the course of 4 or 5 months now. So I was really pleased with what we saw from him this morning, and I think the eye test sort of meets what we've talked about with him and what the data is saying.
Is this weekend too soon for him?
He will be involved this weekend for sure, and I think as the week goes on, we'll decide whether that's from the bench or from the start.
What's the update on Kelvin Yeboah? He wasn't training.
No, he's not trained today, and he had an ankle sprain, which I don't think is particularly serious. I think it'll be a minor setback, and I think he'll be in contention to play this weekend.
How does Julian's game help the others on the field?
No, he'll be really helpful for us, and the basis of that is his versatility. So he's a player that over the course of his time in the MLS has done some really good things at wing back, has done some really good things playing as a number 8 or a number 10, depending on the system. And I think that versatility, that the sort of baseline level of athleticism and competitiveness, which means you can play in various positions, is really helpful for us. And I think in comparison to what we've got on that side, he brings a different profile. So maybe less of that raw athleticism, dynamism that maybe someone like Bongi brings, but is certainly more of a passer and will help us in terms of controlled spells of possession. So it's nice to be able to have sort of both sides to that coin. And I think we have always wanted to be a team that has a variety of tools at our disposal within certain players, and I think that us at our best over the last however many games has been a team that is flexible and versatile, and we want to be able to get back to providing that variety and adaptability, and Julian definitely helps us there.
Is there any update on the investigation? The comments?
No, not from my perspective. I know obviously the formal procedure is underway. That's been mapped out with the players this morning, as I can imagine is protocol. And I think, as I said after the game, it's such a well-defined process. I think there's been so much thought that goes into it that it's just a case of letting the league do their thing and seeing how it plays out.
I know it's early in the week, but how does Austin look to you?
Yeah, interesting to watch it in comparison to this coach's team from last year, because I would say they're very different and have very different principles, arguably, that sit a bit beneath the team's performances, but they've obviously invested really heavily in a lot of forwards, and they're undoubtedly a team that can cause you real damage on their day. They've started really well. They're pretty lean defensively as well. They've not given up a load of chances nor a load of goals, so they've got plenty for you to worry about. And over the course of this week, we'll become more and more familiar with them. But I still feel like we as a consequence of Sunday, have to look at ourselves, and we got to make sure that we go there and we're a really good version of ourselves, and we've got a really strong focus on what we can do and what we can do well.
What was the feedback to Oyan on his debut?
Yeah, I think he obviously had some ups and downs, and a couple of nice moments, and a couple of moments in defending the box that I'm sure he'll look back at and feel he could have done better around. But it's not easy to make your debut in those circumstances, and we obviously looked very messy toward the end of that game, and I accepted that was going to be the case with the way we made changes, the way we changed shape. The game was very open, lots of transitions, and I think he saw the good and bad for that. So yeah, and again, a situation I'm not going to read too much into on account of the difficulty, I suppose, of making your debut in those circumstances.